The Day the Earth Stood Still is a classic film.
The original movie was a message movie. I do think it's a story that bears retelling for every new generation.
The original has lots of entertainment value and lots of spectacle and lots of interesting genre elements, but that never overpowers character and story. I wanted to try to make a film that was in the same spirit.
The most challenging aspect of making the movie has been to live up to the expectation and hope of the fans of the original movie.
It was a great drama, it was suspenseful, it was exciting. I think Scott was really good at kind of fulfilling all of those different things.
My agent called me up and said, Fox wants to remake The Day the Earth Stood Still. They had been trying to do a remake practically from the moment the first one came out.
We have come to visit you in peace.
My impressions of the original were actually kind of bizarrely unique, which is that I came to the United States when I was 14 years old, didn't speak a word of English, and I had never seen a science fiction movie. And my whole concept of science fiction was having read Jules Verne as a kid.
The iconic imagery, the whole concept of aliens, flying saucers, as such, it was just an incredible revelation.
And so the movies always had a certain meaning or resonance for me.
In many respects, The Day the Earth Stood Still is a unique science fiction picture, and it's unique by virtue of its chronology. In other words, it happened at a time when film science fiction in America wasn't something that people saw all the time. It was one of the very earliest entries.
Special, I think, because it's provocative. It was about things that were really on people's minds at the time.
The original film was such a product of 1951 and the Cold War and an era when there was the struggle to establish the UN.
Our world at the moment is full of tensions and suspicions.
The original message, in that sense, was very much tuned to the time, and it was really kind of a shocker at the time because movies, particularly Hollywood movies, didn't have explicitly political messages.
Day the Earth Stood Still was about something a little bit more thoughtful, humans facing beings from another world, but also seeing what meaning could be wrought from that situation.
There is a marvelous sequence in the original Day the Earth Stood Still that's a throwaway. To me, it's the essence of the picture. Michael Rennie has taken Billy Gray out for a day to explore all the monuments in Washington, D.C. And of course, eventually they wind up at the spacecraft. And when they get there, they see a radio guy. He's interviewing people and he's saying, "Are you afraid? Are you afraid? Aren't you feeling afraid?" And he gets to Klaatu and he says, "How do you feel about this?" And Klaatu says,
I am fearful when I see people substituting fear for reason. In fact, I would like...
Thank you, Mr. Carpenter. Thank you very much.
That's why that film was made. And that's what that film's all about. That we should be afraid when fear replaces reason.
I think that film had a message for its time, and I think the question was, why make the remake? Why redo a classic? And I think one of the things about a classic, in this case, especially in science fiction, is that you can translate it to another time.
I mean, the original movie is really a unique work of art. It also has a tone, a sort of innocence about it. Even if you were to remake the movie shot for shot, line for line, you'd never be able to capture that innocence. So, in a sense, what you've got to do is embark on retelling the story in a completely different way in order to bring out the spirit of the original movie.
Hey, Mark.
After I wrote the script, Fox decided to go out to a bunch of directors that seemed interesting to them, and I know that one of the names that was very high on their list was Scott Derrickson, who had made The Exorcism of Emily Rose.
Nice. Cut. That was good. I'm a tremendous fan of the original film. I think The Haunting and The Day the Earth Stood Still are my two favorite films that Robert Wise did. And I was lucky enough to meet him when I was a film student, I think, at a film festival and had dinner with him.
Action.
So I was a bit skeptical when the script was first sent to me, but once I read the script, it seemed like it was a smart update. But I also appreciated the fact that it was also respecting, I think, the basic heart and soul of the original. but it was taking into account the fact that the times have changed dramatically. And so I saw an opportunity in the reimagining of that story for this day and age.
Scott kind of saw the movie as a bit of a thriller. Scott actually saw Klaatu as a hitman. He came here to observe us and then to kill us.
In the original film, Klaatu was a mostly benign alien who was here for our own good, telling us, please shape up. Now, fast forward 60 years, Klaatu's come back, and this time he's not here for anything nice.
There's something about Klaatu's character that, for me, embodies the spirit of this age. He's morally complicated, he's morally complex. You could even say he's morally confused in some ways, and there is a severity to him that feels more apropos to this era.
The idea, in my mind at least, was an unknown or almost unknown male lead as Klaatu. Then somebody came up with the idea of Keanu Reeves, and he really was the only star that anybody could imagine. You buy him in that sort of otherworldly way.
He really understands how to create a captivating presence for the audience without overacting and to draw them in, and without using necessarily a lot of dialogue.
I think the movie became a bit bigger once Keanu became involved with it also. Keanu wanted a certain amount of palpable danger added to it.
Keanu's involvement really helped sharpen the screenplay. He got involved with the script, and I spent a lot of time with him and with the writer, David Scarpa, sitting in the room, working through literally every scene in the movie.
I think that would be a dangerous idea with a lot of actors because they would be trying to beef up their role, whereas ironically, I think what Keanu's trying to do is sort of shape the whole movie and make the whole movie better.
As a collaborative group effort, thinking about, Klaatu. What is the perspective? What are we trying to say? And how are we going to say it? How are we going to tell this story?
A number of scenes were written specifically with him in mind. For instance, the scene with the lie detector was something that was conceived entirely for him. We came up with this scene that I don't think would have necessarily fit the Klaatu that I had originally conceived, but with Keanu, it was a scene that made a lot of sense.
Once the three of us felt settled that we had a script that was solid and really held the story together well, that's when I think he kind of took on the role of the actor playing Klaatu.
I'm leaving you now.
No. That's the secret of any good science fiction, getting the audience to believe that it's real, in particularly the performance of Klaatu. The movie succeeds or fails on whether or not you believe that Keanu Reeves is an alien. The original filmmakers were very conscientious of the problem, specifically that if they cast a star, and in the case of the original, I believe it was Spencer Tracy that had wanted to play the role of Klaatu, they knew if he walks out of that spaceship and takes off his little spacesuit helmet and there's Spencer Tracy, the audience was not going to believe it, and that's why they cast Michael Rennie. They wanted somebody who was not familiar to the audience.
I don't think you could have started the movie with a spaceship landing in the middle of Central Park and Keanu Reeves stepping out of. I think it would have gotten a laugh. So that was one of the big creative challenges. How are you going to have that happen?
It bothered us a great deal because Keanu's almost iconic in and of himself. So we designed phases of Klaatu, the triangular-shaped alien head with the big eyes and everything. What if that were a spacesuit?
Then it felt like, it needed to be more. We needed to see something different. So we played around with ideas of something kind of more abstract. And then eventually we went back to an old Gort design that actually had all this illumination, and that wasn't appropriate for Gort, but was appropriate for the spacesuit that Klaatu was wearing. And that ended up being the actual final design.
Phase 2 of the suit became the version of newborn Klaatu.
We don't see that it's Keanu Reeves. Then when we do finally see him, we even obscure his face with the glass while we see him drinking this water, and then we finally reveal, oh, there's Keanu Reeves. So by the time you get there, you've been softened up a little bit that the alien is Keanu, and hopefully that helps you buy into the idea rather than just revealing him walking out of the ship.
What were you before you were human?
Different.
The
thing that was most important in the casting was absolute credibility. We really needed to have an actress who radiated that kind of intelligence.
Come on, dear. Time to go to bed.
The original movie, Helen was sort of a housewife, mother, sort of living in this rooming house. Now she's a biologist, a scientist. It sort of explains a little bit why it's her that managed to encounter him. She's kind of on the front line.
In the first film, Klaatu almost, in a sense, studies her on one level because, oh, a mother, an Earth mother, interesting. And he slowly becomes emotionally, in a sense, attached to her.
And action.
We now have an evolution of this character where she's become essentially an attorney for the human race. She's arguing for the continuance of mankind.
I felt that Jennifer Connelly would be able to ground this fantastical idea in reality. She just cannot not be truthful in a moment as a performer.
Keanu and Scott and I flew to New York, had lunch with her at the Soho House, and told her how great we thought she would be and how unbelievably disappointed we would be if she didn't play the part. And fortunately, she wound up saying yes.
I've always wanted to work with her and to get the chance to work with her. And if, you know, the heart and spirit and soul that she shares with us as Helen Benson and as her as an actress, as a person, I mean, you gotta be dead not to be moved by her.
Are you a friend to us?
I'm a friend to the Earth.
She's a really brave, determined character. She lives with her son, who is her stepson, named Jacob. Scott Derrickson really employed the relationship with Jacob, with her son, in a different way than was employed in the original film.
They're from a fragmented family where the father has been killed and she's a stepmother, and you know, there's something very modern and interesting about that. And I felt that an alien observing the struggle to do that would be very interesting and very compelling.
Ready and act.
What are you doing? I'm trying to help them.
Jacob, I'm trying to help us.
Listen, kill him. That's what Dad would have done.
You fight me on everything. On everything.
My dad were here.
But he isn't here. He's gone.
I knew that we'd have to have two actors in the role of Helen and Jacob that could be genuinely emotional, and that it couldn't be something they were faking. Finding an actor who's 8 or 9 years old who really do that is not easy.
Scott has taught me when you want to do the scene, you just got to get your head in the game. You can't be thinking about, oh, I'm going to go do that. When I'm done, I'm going to go do that. You have to, like, really be in the scene.
I think it's hard, it's complicated stuff to pull off for a kid, for someone his age, and I think he really did a fantastic job.
And action.
Professor Barnhart remains pretty similar in terms of what his purpose is in this movie as the other one.
Sam Jaffe played him, who obviously had the resemblance to Einstein. And so on, and we thought, okay, so what do we do with that today? So we sort of really cast against type, and we went and asked John Cleese.
Cut. Great. Let's go again.
I just knew him to be a guy who had an absolutely searing and intimidating intellect. And I really thought, okay, he's just gonna come at it from a completely unexpected, interesting angle, and it's exactly what happened.
It's only on the brink that people find the will to change. Only at the precipice do we evolve. I just found that it was very gripping. There was a lot of emotion in it.
Excellent.
Which is interesting because I don't think of sci-fi necessarily as being terribly good on human emotions.
49, take 2. Mark.
You know, if an alien lands on Earth, you bet that the Secretary of Defense is going to be the person that's there. And that's just not something that was thought of in 1951 when the first one was made. So that was a character that was written into the script.
Now please, tell me, why have you come to our planet?
Kathy had the power, the stature, and it didn't in any way seem like a stock character.
Ready and action.
Yes, Mr. President. As you wish, sir. Thank you.
Cut. Great. Very nice, Kathy. She's very direct. She would occasionally put me on the spot. I'd be giving her a direction about how to play a scene, and she would say, "You do it." And I would have to stand there and act for Oscar-winning Kathy Bates, which was a bit intimidating, but then I found that that's actually helpful to her.
I think we've succeeded in putting together the same level of accomplished artists in today's world as they did 56 years ago.
We won't make it.
If you're making a movie like this that's a sci-fi drama, you will have to tell a story that is both dramatically truthful and dramatically effective and has the wonderment that you want from the science fiction genre and the tension that you want from a science fiction thriller.
Wise always believed in rooting his films in reality and grounding them. And I think that's one of the real treasures about the original film. The atmosphere is very believable in the way that the world actually looks.
1950, there were still a lot of the film noir techniques that were starting to bleed over into other genres as well. So that's why you have all these gritty documentary shots. That's why everything is on location. That's why it all looks rather realistic.
Scott's directorial style reflects that a lot too. A lot of it is set at night. A lot of it is sort of swathed in fog. It's got a slightly darker tone to it than probably I had originally conceived it as being.
The look of the movie and the creativity were really driven by Scott's interest in creating a very specific mood for the film that was very believable, but also very fresh.
Scott laid out the different characters that he wanted to create with the rain, with the snow, with the wind, with the leaves. And it sounds strange that, you know, wind is a character, but when you look at the way it's layered with lighting, it's amazing, because it does. It creates its own character.
Scott Derrickson is easily one of my favorite directors.
You just pull back and see stuff a couple more minutes, and then just tilts up.
He has a visual sense to his storytelling that really sort of brings in the production design in a way that's sort of irresistible from a production design standpoint.
David was one of the first people that I called when the movie was offered to me. He and I developed a lot of understanding of what it is that interests us about production design.
It's very important to Scott to find a sort of color code for the whole film and be very rigorous about how it's going to be applied and stick to it.
I don't like too many colors in the frame, and at the same time, I don't like just a wash of one color through filters or through film processing to where, you know, the entire image is changed. You know, we went through each scene and sort of talked about the color palette and controlling it and compressing it in a way that still felt real, but in such a way that the audience would be immersed within these particular colors for the duration of the film, so that when the film was over, it was still stuck in your mind what the movie looked like.
We initially thought that we would be shooting a lot of these films outside. That was undermined by bad weather, by schedules, by every kind of difficulty you can think of. By bringing a lot of these scenes into the studio meant that we could get basically much more intricate, dramatic transactions, as long as I could come up with a background that was believable.
The art department have created these amazing indoor sets. The woods, the swamp, it just blew me away.
We were able to make things believable, but even that would not have flown if we didn't have the cinematographer we have, David Tattersall. He can take a set and bring it to life like nobody's business.
Our approach really is sort of classic, old school cinematography, if you like.
David Tattersall is a guy who eats, breathes, and sleeps images, and he thinks about them all the time. And Steve Campanelli, as a camera operator, I can't imagine there's a better camera operator in the world.
And slowly,
very nice.
Because it's so great the way they're doing the two hands.
He contributes so much to the process. He really is constantly coming up with adjustments and additions that are just great contributions.
I'll go with John for a second, Kathy, and then I'll whip back to get your line.
Seems to be like a lot of classic influences, you know, from the great filmmakers of yesteryear, and all blended together using the latest equipment that we have available to us.
So in this movie where we're doing an enormous amount of CGI, we're also using the oldest tricks in the book. And it was this sensibility on the part of Tattersall that you could take good foreground scenery and amplify it by whatever tools there are, be they old or new, and get to a place of depth and expansion. That's how we were able to pull it off.
Roll 3 cameras.
We want this movie to be really shot with traditional effects and then add the visual effects to build on that.
Do this.
Yeah, go. Bring it up, Dale. All right, we're rolling. Let's back it up. A little more.
Got something to be proud of. It was a pretty ferocious day. Any time you can actually make the stunt guys all nervous, it's bragging rights. So he'll be using that for a little bit.
Right on, Marsh.
Yeah.
The industry has changed a lot. The visual effects department does quite a bit of what we used to do, for good reasons, safety reasons, technical reasons. But what's great about this project is working with Jeff Oken, our visual effects supervisor. His exact words to me were, I want you to give me everything practically, and if I have to, I will either add or take away. For the explosion where Keanu takes control of 2 helicopters that are chasing him, Jeff Oken said to me, well, there's nothing I have to do here. Keanu's in the shot, the explosion is here. All I have to do is add the helicopters coming down prior to that, and my job is done.
Great. Very nice.
When Scott hired me onto the film, his through line was, doesn't want to see any visual effects, which was really interesting to me because I really love visual effects. They're completely invisible. A film like this where we have spaceships and alien and nanotechnology and whole-scale mass destruction of things, the trick really becomes, how do you do magnificent storytelling visual effects at a scale large enough to be enjoyable and yet invisible at the same time?
There was a great simplicity to the original in that Klaatu and Gort and the spaceship were these 3 things that clearly belonged to each other and didn't belong to the Earth.
If you look at the special effects in The Day the Earth Stood Still, they're not overly spectacular, but they're really intriguing. It's like when the saucer opens up and you see no seam, and it still works today.
We looked at the original movie and we thought, what do these special effects tell us about the story? And what do they communicate to us? And we then took those answers and applied them to the technology that's available to us today in terms of special effects.
Scott Derrickson and Jeff Oken have been really responsible and inventive and taking care of where we came from, what we're inspired by, what we're based on, to present day.
We went through a lot of different versions of what the spaceship could look like and what Gort would look like, and the initial concepts or the initial attempts were really rooted in technology, which is what you think of when you think of science fiction. You think of progressive technology. And then that led to discussions about how a progressive alien civilization might have technology that's not rooted in the things that we think of as being technological.
Instead of using that sort of 1950s kind of flying saucer hubcap idea, we were looking sort of ahead another step. Part of what I looked into was something called a Dyson sphere, an idea conceived by a physicist named Freeman Dyson, who proposed the idea of a sphere that would surround a star as a means of harnessing all of the power of the star.
It started off with many different formations of clouds and storms. Was something that Scott was very, strong about. He wanted this spherical shape that looked like there was constant movement on it. With that design, we approached so many different color elements and variations of blue, and then later the sphere would change to red once things had changed.
The challenging parts of the sphere was that we wanted to try and create a type of mysterious look to the spheres, but at the same time have a certain danger to it.
I have a particular fear of spheres. They're a strange object to deal with on film because inherently there's no scale to it, so you don't know how big it is.
We did a lot of different tests and a lot of different techniques to try and create a very complex look to something that's such a simple shape.
It's all particle systems based on chaos theory, and it took 30 some odd days for it to render, and we came up with this very clever little way of patching together the sphere to put it together in the super shot.
The super shot is where you actually see a lot of different spheres being activated. And this was one continuous shot. It was important for Scott to feel like there's some kind of life and intelligence to it. So you'll see the lights that are moving around and penetrating the different cloud layers. So that was pretty challenging just to make that one continuous shot.
I think it's simple but effective. Hopefully creates curiosity in the mind of the viewer about what it is that's inside of there, and you don't show them that, and it makes them imagine more than you could ever show them.
It was an exciting challenge. I'd do it again in a minute because it was exhilarating to have these challenges, and I think it's what makes us, do what we do.
Remarkable.
What I really hope people take away from it is a good sci-fi drama, a good sci-fi thriller that's engaging and interesting and has characters that move them and is emotional. And if on top of that, there's something to reinforce an important idea for the world right now, that's great.
The film hopes to entertain, but it does have a message. It's about the human condition, human spirit, and it's asking us to take a look at ourselves.
Will humanity wind up extinguishing itself as a result of its technological advancement because it's not morally advanced? And that was the concern at the time.
It is no concern of ours how you run your own planet. But if you threaten to extend your violence, this Earth of yours will be reduced to a burned-out cinder.
And today our preoccupation is the same one, in a sense. It's can we learn to live within our bounds as citizens of the Earth.
We can't risk the survival of this planet for the sake of one species. If the Earth dies, you die. If you die, the Earth survives.
The thing that essentially remains unchanged is human nature. Until we learn how to treat each other differently, we're really not going to be treating the environment any differently.
As a whole, we can be quite self-destructive. We have not been treading lightly on the planet. We have not necessarily been treating each other with the utmost kindness. And I think that the film addresses that.
I hope that the movie taps into basic optimism, that the change that is coming in the world can be for good, that we can evolve, that we can move past our tendency to be destructive, and hopefully spare ourselves our own self-destruction.
Clearly, we're sort of in a state of crisis as a species, but at the same time, we're part of the world, and therefore we are going to continue to sort of grow with it. So, in a way, the theme remains timeless.
Whether we're right or wrong in the end, we'll have made this with as much intellect as we could muster and as much passion as is humanly possible, and that's rare on a movie.
The basic story of The Day the Earth Stood Still is evergreen and could always be adapted slightly. There are always threats and always times when we can deal with those threats and when we should deal with them. And that's what that movie is about. And that's one of those things that just makes Day the Earth Stood Still last.